If you want to build a successful community, there are 3 main goals that you're going to want to monitor every single month. And those are growth, engagement, and retention. But what you're about to learn about each of these goals might surprise you. So let's get right into it. I'm Carrie Melissa Jones, and I've helped hundreds of organizations invest in meaningful online communities that connect to their brands, drive revenue, make their whole business more successful. Before our clients work with us, they often bring lots of emotional data with them. And that emotional data, while helpful in some cases, actually self-sabotages their community work. So what is going to be so important about this video is that I'm going to talk about the quantitative data that can guide you and help you understand what success realistically looks like in a community. The first type of goals that you want to be paying attention to are growth goals. Now, you don't necessarily need week over week, month over month goals. You might have cohort by cohort goals in place. But either way, you should keep in mind what kind of growth is reasonable for your community. Number 1 is growth actually might not be your goal. It's totally fine if growing a large community is not a huge piece of your aspirations. In fact, I honor that. But if that's the case, you need to acknowledge that now and then let that go. Now, if growth is important to you, which it is for most businesses, then it's time to get realistic with ourselves about what kind of growth we can expect. Now, I can't tell you how many clients have come to me saying, well, we'll just add all of our customers into our community, or we'll opt them all in without their permission to our community. So therefore we'll have thousands of people or even millions of people in our community. This is not a best practice. It is not a good idea. Not only will it stop growth in the future, you'll see horrific churn rates and people dropping off turnover throughout the future months. It's also not realistic to expect for you to get thousands and thousands of new members every month unless your marketing efforts are commensurate with those goals. So if you are marketing to audiences of tens to hundreds of thousands of folks on a monthly basis, then it might be realistic and reasonable to expect that kind of growth. Otherwise, that's just ridiculous. Now, I am all for big dreams, big goal setting, but if you want to be getting that many new members every single month, every single quarter, then you're gonna have to dream bigger with your marketing as well. So maybe you're planning a national speaking tour. Maybe you're planning to do some incredible partnered workshops with really big names in your industry. Maybe you have a whole team of content experts and you're creating videos that you think are gonna go viral on TikTok or wherever else you might be posting them. Either way, no matter what dreams you have, you've got to make sure that you're going out to an audience that is much larger than what you expect to actually join your community. I've worked with many clients, both small businesses and large enterprise firms. And for small businesses, what I see a lot of is that in every new cohort or every month or so, a new community member growth rate is around 20 to 30 people. And if you think about 20 to 30 people joining your community, imagine if 20 to 30 people were to walk into your home right now. That's actually a lot of people. Making them all feel comfortable and oriented in this space is not an easy thing to do. So that's actually a reasonable rate of growth for a small business. But even if you're at 1 to 2 new members every month, what you're gonna wanna do is set a baseline. What's realistic for you? What has been the case for you in the past? And then if you want to amp that up, if you want to grow it, if you want to set a goal around going from 2 to 10 members every month, which is realistic, then think about how can I experiment with different marketing techniques to see how I can amplify this. So maybe I'll do a partnered webinar this month, even though I've never done one before. Maybe I'll go out and participate in other online communities where people can get to know me better, and then I can share that my community exists and invite them to be part of it. No matter what, your growth is probably not going to be organic. Hoping and praying for a piece of content to go viral so that you all of a sudden become famous and your online community explodes in growth is not a reasonable thing to plan for. It's a great dream to have, but not something to plan for. And so we've got to be reasonable, set our own benchmarks, and then think about how we can improve and get better over time. We're really only comparing ourselves to ourselves, not to what everyone else is doing. Shut all that other stuff out. If you're feeling lost here, you're not even sure how to define your target audience, what audiences you would even go out to share that your community exists, then I am going to strongly recommend that you check out my absolutely free workshop, How to Design Community Experiences and Programs, which you can find linked right here in this YouTube video and in the YouTube description. The next goal to pay attention to and area to measure on a regular basis is engagement. Oh, engagement. It's a word with so many meanings that it is effectively meaningless on its own. So we've got to define it for ourselves. What are we talking about when we're talking about engagement in our communities? For a lot of people, engagement is a feeling. They feel that their community is engaged based on qualitative behaviors that they're seeing in their communities. Some things they might be looking at and feeling positive about are a sense of steady conversation happening in the community, a general sense of a thriving nature of things. We hear these things all the time. People answering questions quickly so that you don't have to, people being nice and not toxic to one another. These are all good starting points. The problem with leaving engagement as a feeling is that almost all of us community builders can't just stop there. And that's just human nature, because when it feels good to see that our community is doing well, we might think, well, what more could I be doing? Maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe I could be doing more. And over time, if we're not seeing that engagement going up in quantitative terms or seeing it even stable in quantitative terms, our ego is going to push us to say, I bet I'm not doing enough. And you're going to get this unsteady feeling, this lack of confidence that we can champion. I was going to say dominate. I don't like those kinds of terms, but we can win out over that feeling and create something that we're sure is successful, or we know is successful based on our goals. And so that's what we need to do when we're talking about looking at and setting goals for engagement. So now you need to ask yourself, when you're looking at your community, what kind of engagement matters to you? How do you know that you're doing a good job? This can take many, many, many shapes and forms. Some people think of engagement as in-person event attendance. Other people think of it as the percent of people who are showing up from their overall membership base on a weekly basis. Other people might look at how many people are starting threads and then what percentage of those threads are getting responded to by other members. It can look many, many different ways. What's important is that you find something that is measurable to you and meaningful to you so that when you look at it, you're actually going to know whether or not you're making the kind of progress that matters to you in your community. To me, there are a couple of engagement measurements that are really indispensable and can be used across the board no matter what kind of community you're running. The first of these is the percent of your users who are actually participating. And we want to aim for between 4 and 20%. So those are our magic numbers, 4 and 20, 420. That shouldn't be hard to memorize, okay? I'm not talking about the weed 420, okay? But if you are, that's cool. I'm talking about between 4 and 20% of your members should be returning to participate on a regular basis. Another important engagement metric is the number of threads that people are starting without your prompting, and the number or percent of those threads that are getting responded to by your other community members versus by you. You're also going to want to look, if you do live events, at event attendance. How many people are showing up to those events and what percentage of those people are returning visitors to these events. And finally, there are quantitative measures that you can turn the qualitative into the quantitative by asking something like sense of community questions or other kinds of satisfaction questions. How happy are people in the community? Are they getting their goals and needs met? These are not good survey questions. I would never advise you to ask questions in this way, but you understand what I'm saying. And there are plenty of resources out there. You can look up the Sense of Virtual Community Survey. That is an open source tool that you can use. You can use that as a survey and check how people are actually feeling inside the community. Again, when it comes to engagement, really any kind of engagement, those magic numbers are 4 and 20, not 100, not 100%. You are never going to see 100% engagement in your community. If you do, maybe you have 3 people in it and that's why, okay? But in a large community, that is not a realistic expectation. You should not be upset. You should not be let down by seeing anything really less than or anything more than 20%. If it's 20% or more, you're doing incredible work. really. You're above the baseline for most communities. Now, when I work with clients, we always, 100% of the time, create our own set of metrics and create our own dashboards and watch those numbers rise, set our own baselines for them. There are no one-size-fits-all goals that you can set for your community. I've given you some helpful benchmarks here, but you're going to need to set your own goals based on your experience and then build from there. So I'm curious, let me know in the comments, what engagement metrics matter to you? What are you looking at now? And has this video changed your mind about any of them? The next area where we want to be setting goals is around retention. So this is a really, really big topic. Retention can mean a lot of different things, so you need to define, are you talking about retaining your active members, so those who are actually actively participating? Are you just checking how many people are logging in and using your resources? Or are you talking about people who are paid members and whether or not they're going to continue paying over a time period? So retention is just the percentage of your members over a given time period that are continuing to participate in the ways that you define. So what's important here is that you keep in mind what retention really means to you. So in some communities, you actually don't want people to stick around forever. In fact, you want them to finish the program and then move on with their lives and move on to the next milestone. So in that case, it doesn't make sense to aim for really high retention, especially year over year if your program is a year, or even program to program. They should phase out of those programs over time. But basically what you need to be thinking about here is what kind of retention is reasonable for the goals that your community members have. When you're starting out, it's really important to be focusing on the experience that people are going through. So in, let's say, a community where there are monthly events, and that's the main thing that you offer inside of your community, what you'd want to be looking for is between 80 to 90% of people showing up on a regular basis to these events. So if you're not seeing those numbers, then you're going to want to pay attention to how you can reduce churn. And I have a YouTube video on that topic specifically that will be linked in this video description. Now, when you are just starting out, the very earliest of days, whether you're beta testing or in an early launch phase, what you want to be paying attention to here is not necessarily a quantitative metric, but actually qualitative insights. So what I mean by this is you're going to want to spend a lot of time in these early days getting to know your members, getting on the phone with them, sending out surveys and feedback forms to learn what's working and what's not working. Because over time you can make improvements and tweaks, but the best way to do that is to actually ask, how are people experiencing the community today? So look out for those qualitative measures of retention. Look out for qualitative measures of satisfaction and whether people's needs are being met or not. And then you can focus more on retention over time as you scale. Now, if you already have a community today or you're just starting out, chances are you created your community but weren't as intentional as you now see you could have been back then. So if that's the case for you, then I highly recommend that you check out my absolutely free workshop, How to Design Meaningful Community Experiences and Programs. That workshop's going to walk you through how to be really strategic and thoughtful and intentional about your community experience so that your goals like growth, engagement, and retention can in many ways take care of themselves because you've thought through these major elements of community design in a way that most other people aren't considering. That's going to give you a massive advantage over anyone else in the space that you're in and just create an incredible experience for those who are part of your community and create even better relationships between yourself and your members. You can find that video in this video description or linked right here on YouTube. I hope this video was so valuable for you. Make sure to let me know in the comments, what engagement metrics are you looking at today, and has this video changed your mind about anything that you're measuring? If you have any questions at all, find me on Instagram at Carrie Melissa Jones, where I'm absolutely thrilled to answer all of your questions about community engagement, community goals, community, anything. Okay. I'm happy to answer all of those questions and talk to you about what you're learning, where you're getting stuck, and the journey of community building in general. So happy community building, everybody. Take care.